Welcome back to another session. I hope you were well. We've talked about depression and we've talked about how to understand depression and we've talked about how to overcome depression. I thought perhaps in today's session I should provide a different message and one that neither looks towards understanding depression or trying to overcome depression directly. Let me paint a scenario first and perhaps you can see how this applies either to yourself or to someone you know of or someone you care about. In the session prior, I made reference to unfulfilled expectations and how at the root cause of some of our suffering, not all of it, but some of our suffering is this unwillingness to let go and let God. This unwillingness to just take life as it comes. This need to constantly keep track and keep a record and document and focus on things that have not occurred yet. Expectations that we had that have not been fulfilled. Now, rather than talk about that in more detail, here is perhaps a recommendation. Let's assume that you are one of those who suffers from depression. And you've struggled with depression for a while. You've been medicated, you've seen clinical experts, you've been to your church, your mosque, your synagogue, and you eat well, your diet is fine, your gut function is fine, you've got good, your physical specimen health-wise, and still you cannot overcome this cloak of depression over you. Recognizing that depression and what it leads to in terms of its on the downward side of depression is death and destruction. We know that. It's death and destruction, not just metaphorically speaking, but also physically speaking, because you're living beyond or below what's supposed to be your possibilities and your potential. Rather than continue down the spiral, recognizing, and here's a big recognition, that it requires as much effort to live a depressed life as it does to live an abundant life. Now make no mistake, those who are depressed apply more energy in the cause of living than those who are not depressed. Now I made reference, and perhaps you might think this is absurd, but hear me out. Ignorance is the cause of depression. Ignorance would always lead to worry and doubt. Worry and doubt manifests itself in fear. Now, because we only have one body, we manifest fear through the physical vibrations through the body, and in doing so, we have what we call a feeling, anxiety. That anxiety, when it comes, because it is a resonance, when it comes into the body, most people have one of two choices: suppress it or share it. It comes natural for most of us to be ashamed of how we feel and what we are suffering, and therefore we tend to suppress. We push it down, we push it away, we say it doesn't matter, we say we don't want to burden other people. If we suppress it long enough, we start to find that the body starts to break down. We move into a state of dis-ease. We're no longer at ease. If that disease continues, it doesn't just occur in the mind. It doesn't occur just in the spirit, it occurs also in the physical body. And suddenly, at some point, it leads to death and destruction. So, if you want life, what do? We don't try to change death. We don't try to change destruction. We don't even try to change anxiety or depression. We go back to the root cause, ignorance, and we say, what is the opposite of ignorance? What is the antidote? Knowledge. But knowledge of the truth. And the great writer says, the truth shall set you free. Not just knowledge, but knowledge of the truth is what sets you free. Now, said knowledge, which is true, creates a vibration of abundance. But that starts with the process of understanding. You see, knowledge of the truth starts with seeking information, seeking ideas, being open to new memories, being open to new opportunities and new possibilities. And you find you start to develop an understanding, but that only comes if you comprehend what you learn. Study is the watchword. For those who are depressed, you've got to be a good learner and a good listener and someone who is curious. By study, we develop understanding because we comprehend what we study. But more importantly, we move into the realm of application, and that leads to wisdom. Now, the great writer said that wisdom is the principal thing, and in all you're getting, get understanding. Now, wisdom is principle. It's hard to get to, but we can all get understanding because we can seek for the truth. And if we apply said knowledge, rather than have fear, the opposite of which we have faith. Now, faith comes by what you hear. Faith also leaves by what you hear. Fear comes by what you hear. Fear also leaves by what you hear. And so the great writer Paul said, don't be conformed to this world of appearance. Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. Faith comes by what you hear, and what you hear, and what you hear. So do not conform to the world of appearance, but renew your mind. The constant renewal of the mind. In other words, flush your mind with new positive ideas so that you're never clouded in the pit of concern and worry and doubt and fear and anxiety. But that you renew your mind by what you hear, and you want to listen to positive, truthful information. Now, even the great writer goes along to say, well, whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is just, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is kind. And he goes on, think on those things. And the call is to say to you, you cannot focus on something without attracting it. Depression is simply a symptom, but what it indicates is that you have attracted what you have been focusing on by omission or even by commission. But if you focus on the positive, you tend to find you have faith. That faith creates a sense of relaxation, peace, and ease. And what you find is, rather than be anxious and depressed, what you have is well-being. You have abundance. You have speed. You're not depressed, you're accelerating through life. And so here is today's session's message. If it requires as much effort and as much energy to be in a depressed state as it requires to be an accelerated, positive, rich experience of a state. Now, if you feel depression, and here I'm going to be radical in my recommendation, if you feel any sense of depression or anxiety, why don't you do something that terrifies you, stretches you, and excites you at the same time, but something positive. You know, for so many of us, we're so scared of what could happen in life that we're willing to stop the journey before the journey has actually even begun. We worry, we panic about things that have not even occurred. Actually, sometimes we worry and panic about things that will never occur. What are you thinking on a day-by-day basis? What are you thinking on an hourly basis? What are you thinking on a minute-by-minute basis? The quality of your life comes down to the quality of your thoughts and your focus. So take a radical decision and a radical step. And that just requires that you do something different. Start a business. Oh, I'm depressed, I can't actually pay the bills. We're suffering. Mum is down, mum is ill, she needs medical help, I can't pay the medical bills. Start a business. At the moment and at the period and in the phase of suffering, and if you look through history, you find some of the best ideas, some of the best people, some of the best inspirational creativities and creations we've had have come from people being down in the mud. You don't wait until things are great to start the process. You start in the dust. You start in the ground. Start a business. Start a new relationship. Start a new enterprise. Reach out and start helping people. Make promises of things you would do for people that would require you to live up to those promises. Make a pledge. Make a proclamation. Make a declaration. One of those declarations should be, and you must promise yourself that you will never break this. But one could be that you would help other people and you would always be present. You see, one of the greatest promises a father can make to a son is to say, if it's within my power and within my ability, I will do it. Anything for you. That promise is what gives inspiration, but it gives the child hope. And I think a lot of people don't share their plans and their ideas. Now, I know this because I have shared this maybe years ago. But you have to be very selective about those who you share your goals with. But in the same way, public proclamations necessitate and encourage accountability partners. People coming up and saying, I think I trust him. I heard what he said, and I think he can do it. And so people remind you of what you promised, which is why if you think about politicians, every time there is a new election, we're reminded by the constituencies that we represent about the promises we initially made. And people say, well, you promised us X and Y, and you haven't delivered, so we will not vote for you. You want to tell people, you want to proclaim what you will do, even in your depression. And here's what's interesting. You want to share with other people that you are depressed and that you are struggling. And by doing so, what you realize is that you find people of like mind. People look up to you. People are drawn to you to help. And you're not a lone ranger. A lot of the struggles men particularly suffer is because we're raised not to share our feelings, our experiences, our troubles, our demons, our fears, our worries, etc. And so we store all that information and we take it to the grave. And I'm saying, well, there's a new dawn. There's a time and a place for everything. Even Solomon said, there's a time to cry and a time to be happy. There's a time to be born and a time to die. There is a time for everything under the sun. And you cannot go through life believing that you have to go through this alone. What a miserable life to suffer alone, surrounded by over 7 billion people. What a miserable life. Not only have you failed those around you, you've also robbed those around you who would have been joyful of the opportunity to serve you. Make a proclamation, make a declaration, start a business, begin something radical, something very different to what you are going through. You are going through bankruptcy. Don't let it stop you. Start a business. And here's the key part of the whole recommendation. Race car drivers are taught when you go into a spin, the natural process is to face the direction of what you want to avoid. So you're driving in a car, and you're going down the corner, and the car goes into a spin. And the worry is, I don't want to hit the walls or the fence. And race car drivers are told and taught, you must always keep your eyes in the direction of where you want to go, despite the temptation. The temptation and the instinct is to look towards where you think you're going to arrive at. But the recommendation is, no, look towards where you wish to go, no matter how hard it might be. Because your body follows the direction of your eyes, and the car follows the direction of the driver's eyes. Similarly, the reason this recommendation is put forward is simply that when you're depressed, you're looking backwards, you're looking downwards, you're looking at the now. When you start a business, when you make promises, when you make declarations, when you start something new, you're looking towards the horizon, you're looking towards the future, you're looking towards the possibilities, you're raising your chin up, you're looking towards hope and glory. You're not looking downwards towards death and destruction. And so by changing your focus, you take your focus away from the problem that you're facing, and you start to put yourself towards a mountaintop with possibilities. But even more importantly, you find actually your synapses start to fire up because you're thinking about problem solving now, as opposed to problem management or containment. So one of the ways to overcome depression is to immerse yourself in something greater than yourself. Immerse yourself in a new opportunity. And I know most people say, well, you have to know what you're doing. Well, not really. If you're depressed, the time for planning and control of thoughts and trying to justify what should be done first has to stop. Become more spontaneous and take a leap. As the saying goes, jump and then grow your wings on the way down. Lean into your fears. Try something different, radically different, something positively radically different. And what you will find is along the way down, you will find that you will grow. See if you're not willing to take a risk. you cannot grow. And if you cannot grow and refuse to grow, you would never become your best self. And if you cannot and do not become your best self, you've lived life below your potential. And if you live life below your potential and your inner conscious knows this, you will be depressed. And so what you want to try is something new, something different, something bold, something in the now, something in the future. You look up and you move towards the dream. Now, in several ways and in several parts of biblical theology, you hear stories of whether that be Moses being told, get up and go, or Abraham, get up and go, or even Joshua, go to the next land and see what they have. Go to the land of Canaan. And you look at David, get up, go. You've encompassed this mountain long enough. Now turn you north. In other words, you've been here too long. Look to somewhere new. As far as your eyes can see, that's where you're going to be. Look forward. And the whole idea is that for you to raise your head up and stop using sight as a means to an end of where you want to be, and start using your imagination. Use your inner eyes. Use your imagination. Use your vision. Use your mind to create possibilities of a future that could be. And if you can, here is a motto that I'll leave you with. I have seen my future, and I have chosen to live there. You want to play the game of inception. Create that world that is good, and live in that world, and let people call you deluded and crazy. But I can guarantee you and assure you of something. If you believe it, if you stay there long enough, in a way you do not know, you will be drawn to that future and away from your suffering.